Dynasties, intentionally erased from history. The real reasons records were destroyed. They didn't fail to remain in history, they were prevented from remaining. The erasure of dynasties from records was not accidental, but rather deliberate, information control, based on clear political intentions. All the history we know comes from surviving records. However, there exist numerous dynasties around the world that, despite having certainly existed at one time, were intentionally erased from historical texts. From the moment of their destruction, they were eliminated, without even their names being spoken. Behind this lay extremely political reasons such as power struggles, religious legitimacy, and ethnic assimilation policies. The main reasons dynasties are erased from history can be broadly divided into three categories. 1. Record manipulation for securing legitimacy. When new rulers emerged, they needed to justify their own power by branding the previous dynasty as illegitimate, tyrannical, or heretical. Therefore, they frequently made the glory and achievements of the previous regime non-existent and thoroughly deleted them from records. 2. Eliminating obstacles to ethnic and religious unity. In multi-ethnic nations or religious states, dynasties themselves sometimes became symbols of ethnic conflict or religious strife. Therefore, the very existence of such dynasties became inconvenient, and conquerors tried to suppress rebellion by not leaving their memory behind. 3. Destruction and monopolization of recording media. Information in ancient and medieval times was transmitted through stone tablets, scrolls, and oral tradition. In other words, if physical destruction of records occurred, traces of that culture or regime could be easily erased. Those who intentionally burned books, scraped away inscriptions, and silenced voices were the ones who truly made history. Case studies: China's pre-Qin dynasties, between the lineages of Yin and Zhou. In Chinese history, the dynasties counted as official, successive dynasties are considered to be Xia, Yin, Zhou, Qin. But in reality, there were multiple short-lived regimes during these intervals. However, their records are barely mentioned, even in works like the Records of the Grand Historian and Book of Han, being treated merely as legends, rebellions, or heresies. Behind this lay the political desire of later rulers to construct an ideal lineage of Xia, Yin, Zhou, particularly in the Chinese Empire, which emphasized Confucian values. Dynasties with anti-establishment or foreign ethnic elements were discarded as noise in history. The Kingdom of Aksum, Ethiopia, the phantom of a Christian nation. The Kingdom of Aksum, which existed in East Africa, had trade relations with the Roman Empire by the 4th century, and was one of the oldest kingdoms to adopt Christianity as its state religion. Despite having advanced civilization, gold coin minting, and international trade networks, it has somehow become a forgotten existence in mainstream world history. The reason was Eurocentric historical perspectives and the stereotype of Africa uncivilized, along with the colonial policies of European powers. Aksum's records were severed, and it was long ignored by textbooks and academia. The Amorite dynasty, first dynasty of Babylon behind the Code of Hammurabi. The Amorite dynasty, to which King Hammurabi, who established the famous Code of Hammurabi, belonged, actually saw multiple Babylonian regimes before and after it, branded as religiously heretical, leading to their names being intentionally deleted. Particularly, kings who held faiths different from Semitic gods were excluded from later cuneiform records as false kings. The erasure of these seemingly vanished dynasties was political memory manipulation carried out under the logic of gods choosing history, brought about by the fusion of divine and royal authority. Fragmented dynasties of the Mongol Empire. Intentional neglect of Chagatai and Hulagu lineages. After Genghis Khan's death, the vast Mongol Empire built by his descendants eventually split into 4 great khanates. Among these, the Ilkhanate and Chagatai Khanate that existed in Iran and Central Asia, despite their significant presence, became barely mentioned existences in history. The reason was that modern Turkey, Iran, and China each avoided recognizing common roots when speaking of their own legitimacy, dismissing foreign rule as exceptional or periods of chaos. This was also evidence that the legitimacy of nation building depended on How to tell the past. Conclusion. History is not an accumulation of recorded things, but a product of selected memories. Dynasties were not made, non-existent, because they perished. It was because those who destroyed them prevented them from being spoken of. This is a problem that persists today. No matter how advanced the civilization or rich the culture they built, if it is not recorded and not passed down, it will not appear on the main stage of history. Knowing this fact, we cannot help but ask, is the history we know really the entirety of history? The true history has not yet been told. Rather, within what was not told may lie humanity's real story. Now, more than ever, won't you lend an ear to the voices of the erased dynasties?